The Ford Ranger gets a new generation for the 2024 model year, and in this video I'm going to cover the exterior, the interior, take it for a drive, see what it's like out on the road, as well as talking about the fuel economy you can expect and the pricing and how it compares to the competition. So as far as the 2024 Ranger, well, as you can see here, it's totally new here. It's on this newer platform. It's been updated, and there's some nice dimensional changes as well. So it's about 2.2 inches wider on a 2.4 inch wider track. So that was partially to accommodate the bigger V6 engines, which are available here not only in the regular Ranger, but of course for the Ranger Raptor, which unfortunately this is just a regular XLT we're standing next to here, but hopefully I'll get to review a Raptor version in the future. But as far as the other dimensional changes, lengthwise, it's about the same. Again, they got to keep it, in a normal mid-sized truck size so that it can fit in a regular garage. But what it does have is a 1.9 inch longer wheelbase. So that has been stretched out a good bit here, and that should help us with better stability, better ride quality, and I'll talk more about that once we hit the road. But as far as the exterior styling changes, I think it's a really nice redo. You have some nice lights in the front there that even here on this lower XLT trim have the nice LED accent light, something that's often reserved for the top trims of the competing trucks, and nice bold grille. And I also like how we have some painted fenders and bumpers, and it doesn't look too cheap. A lot of, again, the other mid-grade and lower trims of some of the competing trucks still look kind of cheap. This looks really nice with this sport appearance package. We have these dark gray wheels that are 17 inches and look nice. We have some nice Goodyear tires here, and some of this stuff isn't super high quality, like the XLT fender vent here is just regular plastic, and a few other things like that, but you still have the nice stickers there on the back of the bed. And then going out to the back of the Ranger here, you have Ranger stamped into the back there, and is a really nice look out back there as well. Although I would like to see some built-in steps as standard like you see in the Chevy Colorado, but there is a step kind of option available on these if you do like that, to get into that truck bed a little easier. But speaking of the truck bed, that is the one other big change here, is that for the Ranger for 2024, you only get it in the crew cab 5-foot bed configuration. There is no longer beds, there is no shorter cab version of this, and that is something that some other competitors like the Chevy Colorado have also gone with, just this one configuration. But there are some others that notably still do offer various bed and cab configurations, like the Toyota Tacoma and the Nissan Frontier. But as far as the bed here in the Ranger, the big thing is that it's gotten a lot wider thanks to the extra width here of this truck. And so in between the bed walls there, you have a good bit more width than some of the other competing trucks. That means you can lay a piece of plywood or a drywall flat in here, which is something you can't do in most of the others. And you also have, as you can see, some various tie downs. There's lights. You can also see you have a regular power outlet as well as a household plug, and great, you have all of those. I also like that the tailgate is damped, and that's something I believe that comes as standard versus some of the others where that kind of stuff is usually an extra cost option. Now this one does have the extra cost spray and bed liner for about $500, and that's certainly something you're going to want here if you're ever going to use your truck for any truck stuff. But overall, I think they did a great job here on the redo of the new Ranger. I think it's a really sharp looking truck. The interior of the 2024 Ranger is another area where it looks a little nicer than some of its comparable competition, and you have this 12.4 inch screen as standard, the standard partially digital gauges here, and just the interesting trim and the vent designs, and it's just very visually appealing in my opinion, and a really nicely done interior. But as far as the basics goes, first off, these seats, I really like these beige seats. It's an option a lot of the others don't let you get. Might not be the best as far as keeping them clean and stuff if you do plan to get dirty with your truck here, but it's a nice seat though. These are super comfortable and pretty soft seats as well. That is one thing. Some of the other competitors, especially like the Chevy Colorado, has some pretty firm seats. These are nicely soft and just supportive still, nice bolstering, and are just really well done seats. I really enjoy sitting in these seats this week. They're also heated here in this trim, and I believe that's as nice as they get. There's no cooled seats, but none of the competitors offer that either, really. But moving on to the steering wheel here, you have a really nicely shaped steering wheel. It has a great 9-3 grip, nice little 10 and 2 notches. You have a decent amount of buttons here on the front of the wheel, but not too overwhelming or anything. And it's nicely leather wrapped here, and just a really nice wheel. Moving on to the gauges here though in the Ranger, they are pretty nice looking. So this is the 8-inch, I believe, digital cluster, along with the other little, also digital, but not screen-based things there on the right and the left. Now, if you want to have a fully digital cluster, you can get that in the Lariat. That comes standard in the Lariat. But this is what most of the other competitors will give you. Some even just still have old analog gauges. So I'd say this is, better than average and really nice looking gauges. They do all the basics really well. You have a variety of information they can display, including some extra additional auxiliary gauges, off-road status, things like that. And, just a really nice little cluster in my opinion. And I don't really see a need to go up to that 12-inch screen in the Lariat. This seems totally sufficient in my mind. But coming over to the middle of the dashboard, again, it's so great that you get this 12.4-inch screen as standard. Even in the base $35,000 truck, you still get this screen. And it's a really nice screen. It's nice and high resolution, and the software is pretty snappy and works really well. I like how you have the consistent row of climate controls here, and also this little row of shortcut buttons to hop in between all the various things, and then whichever thing you select is what's always displayed here on the top. The wireless Apple CarPlay, wireless Android Auto, all worked flawlessly this week. Zero connectivity issues, which is great. And just a really easy to navigate system in my opinion. And I also love how you do have still physical climate controls down here beneath it, as well as a physical volume knob. Those are also very much appreciated. With some other competitors these days, getting rid of all these kind of controls, it's great that you still have some physical controls here. I also love this shifter placement because it is perfectly placed to perch your hand here to either adjust the volume or the climate or some of these lower screen items. And I don't know, there's a cool little ergonomic feat here that I think was really well thought out. And anyway, great screen. Moving on here, storage spaces here in the Ranger are pretty good. I'd say slightly better than average for a truck like this. So in the doors here, you have a usual kind of pocket array. In the middle here, you will see you have a wireless charging pad here. In this one, I believe that is part of the upgrade package you get here. In addition to the regular XLTs, the high XLT package gives you that. And it's a pretty decent wireless charging pad. I did try it out a couple of times. Has a little bracket here. It's not super rubberized, but does have a little bit of a groove kind of pattern there to help hold your phone in place a little bit. Not amazing still for the wireless phone charging design in my opinion, but it seemed to work reasonably well here and charge my phone pretty consistently. You also see a USB-C jack and a USB-A jack there, another little pocket both right next to that pad and also right behind it. And then there's your two cup holders. You have your various buttons here for controlling your four-wheel drive modes and all that stuff. And then you have the center armrest, which also is really plusher and nicer feeling than most of the other competitors. And so I'd say as far as plushness goes, this is one of the nicest interiors. Again, when we're talking about the mid-grade trucks here, the mid-size. And then anyway, open this cubby up and you'll see a nice wide pocket here that gives you also another 12-volt outlet there. But, really well done as far as all that goes. Now, I will say, some of the plastics are nicer than others here. And, there are still some rugged and I guess you could say cheap-feeling bits in here. But that's kind of par for the course with these mid-sized trucks anyway. So nothing out of the ordinary. But then moving on to the back seat here in the Ranger, I actually really like that as well. I think you have a slight bit more rear legroom. I'm 5'9", and me sitting behind myself. I do feel like it's a little more spacious than like a comparable Tacoma or something, especially because you have that cutout there in the back of the front seats there, and I think that gives you a little bit of extra space. You also do have a fold-down center armrest there, which is something that not all the others will give you in this, again, mid-grade kind of trim. You also see a generous little cubby there, as well as some more power outlets there for those rear seat passengers and their own pockets on the doors as well. And of course, plenty of headroom there. And the seats have a few tricks there. You can flip up the bottom. You can also fold down the seat back, but it doesn't split like some of the others do. And some other competitors like the Chevy Colorado even have nifty little bins built into the seat back in those rear seats. So there's a few extra little bonus spaces in some of the others that you don't get here in this. But, overall still pretty nice, well done rear seat in my opinion. And so overall, this interior is really nice. Again, if you want more niceties, you can go up to the Lariat. That gives you like a B&O stereo and a few other things. You also don't get a heated steering wheel here in this XLT, even with this high trim package. And that is something some of the others do throw in at this price point. It's also worth noting, some others like the Frontier will even give you a fully loaded version for the same price as this, and that'll give you leather seats and all that for the same $46,000 like this one is as tested. So, just be aware if you want the most luxurious truck, you can get a little bit more for your money with some of the others. And I'll talk more about the competitors later in this video. But as far as the interior goes, none of them have a 12.4-inch screen, so this has them beat as far as that goes. And just a really big screen too, even not just by the numbers, but just by how, it's not just this little skinny, wide thing. It's this, really nice big screen. So overall, I think they did a great job here on this interior. But let's start up and go for a drive. The Ranger, one notable thing is that you do not get push-button start or or keyless access here, even in this XLT with this option package. You got to go up to the fully loaded Lariat to get a push button start. That is something a lot of the other competitors will give you in at least the mid-grade trim, if not standard. So, but in the Ranger here, you still got the regular switchblade key they've used for many years now. I mean, it's still fine. It's a first world problem to complain about having to dig your hand into your pocket to pull out a key, but it's just one extra step the others don't make you really do. But of course, because of the regular old key here, you just twist it in the slot and it starts right up. All right, so setting off here in the 2024 Ranger. So the first things you notice about it, I think the first thing that has impressed me is the ride quality. It's a little smoother and softer than I just spent a week earlier this spring with a 2024 Tacoma, and that didn't feel like it rode quite as smoothly as this. I mean, all of these new gen midsize trucks have definitely had a nice improvement in their ride quality, but to me, the Ranger, now that I've driven all of the new competitors, this I think has to take the cake as far as ride smoothness. Maybe the GMC Canyon and its top Denali trim might maybe do a little bit better, but I mean, we're really talking top of the class here as far as the ride quality. It is so smooth in here, and all the driver inputs are really good. I always admired even the last gen Ranger for its handling and just for how well it drove, honestly, but I think this one is a nice step up. They did do a lot of work to the suspension, so now you have aluminum control arms. You still have leaf springs in the back and a live rear axle, but they did move the shocks outboard, and of course they've retuned the springs and the dampers here for this new truck as well. But also just like, you know, throttle response is nice and immediate. The second you start getting into the gas, it gives you a response, but it's not overboard. Same thing goes for the brakes, nice and easy to modulate them smoothly. The steering is pretty accurate, precise, and nicely weighted, and just everything is combined to just make a pleasant driving experience for the most part. I'd say the one mechanical, not downfall, but Achilles heel of this vehicle though is this 10-speed automatic still. Most of the time it works mostly fine, and in this kind of an application it works pretty well the way it's tuned, but it still is a little resistant to downshift, and I complained about this even in the 2024 Mustang with this same automatic, where they like to hypermile a little too much. It makes me wait, like even right there, it made me do a little bit more gas there to finally get a downshift, and wasn't quite as eager to give me the power I was looking for. And there's sometimes, especially climbing hills, where it really wants to lug the engine, like now, and I'm like, no, give me a downshift. I want to go a little bit faster. And it's just a little resistant to that sometimes. You could probably work around that if I drove around in sport mode all the time or something silly if you like that, if you wanted to. But in normal mode, it should be doing what I want it to do, and it doesn't always do that. Now, whenever you're up and running, it's usually fine, but just, you know, one thing that, you know, has irked me every once in a while here, and detracted from the driving experience just a little bit. But I put it up into the sport driving mode here, and let's turn down onto this back road here and see how it does. And here we go. Even there, I think it's probably started in second because it wasn't super aggressive. But I mean, once it gets cooking, then it cooks. I mean, and this thing is really punchy and honestly feels better than the numbers suggest. Right now, the car is telling me it's 100 degrees outside. It's really hot, and so, you know, this motor's been a little heat soaked too, doing some of this interior filming and stuff with the AC on. So it's not going to probably rip my head off now, but I have noticed throughout the course of my week, I've already been driving this vehicle for a week, it's nice and punchy. And the turbo motor really is a strong one and works really well. So it's the 2.3 liter EcoBoost 4-cylinder turbo motor. It does 270 horsepower, 310 pound-feet of torque, and that's, I'd say, on the lower end of the spectrum for this class of vehicle. Some others do, you know, a few horsepower more, and there's some others though that do give you, you know, a good bit more horsepower or torque, or both. And Ford's answer to that is by offering now here for the Ranger finally the 2.7 liter EcoBoost V6. Now that is an extra cost option. It's $2,200 extra for that engine, and it's a 2.7. It's different than the 3 liter EcoBoost you get in the Raptor version, but that does bump horsepower nicely up to, I think, about 315 horsepower, and I think about 430 pound-feet of torque. So that's going to be the way to go, you know, if you do want a regular Ranger with a lot of power, and it's great that they offer that option. But I think for the average truck buyer, this is totally sufficient. I think with the old gen version, Car and Driver got a 6.5 seconds 0 to 60 time. Now they did shorten up first and second gear in these new ones, so I would say it's probably going to accelerate maybe a little bit faster here this time around, because I think weight is pretty similar between this and the outgoing truck. So, you know, I would say something in the low 6-second range is probably a safe bet as far as 0 to 60 times for those who care about that. But the bottom line is all these things are nice and punchy, and with the turbo you have that nice punch down low in the RPM range when you're driving around town and need that instant pickup. And that's something that, for example, the final V6 holdout in this segment, the Nissan Frontier, that's going to make you rev that engine out and work a little harder to get that power. But coming up some corners here that I always take, let's see how the Ranger handles. So obviously this one's on these 17-inch wheels and these all-terrain tires, so I'm not going to expect it to handle sporty or anything, but it does handle itself really well. Like I said, I've just been so impressed with the handling here this week. I do have to say though that while I'm going around corners and if I'm in a hurry or if I'm really pushing it, I think that the Tacoma probably handles a little flatter, honestly, with the SR5 that I had earlier this year. That to me, I think, felt a tiny bit sportier in the handling department. But when you compare this to Frontier and Colorado, I'd say it's pretty close to all the others. I'd have to really drive them back to back to dissect the minute differences, but they all feel roughly the same in my mind, and they're all going to be totally fine. Again, totally good handling these days. I mean, again, if you haven't driven a modern mid-sized truck in the past 5 years or so, I mean, you'll be really impressed with these whole new crop of trucks. Again, they are really, really well done and a really nice improvement over the prior generation. So, I'm really happy with that. I mean, I think with the Ranger, it started at a pretty high level in my mind with the last gen anyway, that this is a lesser leap than you might say would be for a Colorado, going from one generation to the other of that, but really well done here as far as the handling. And again, I think the focus was on the ride, clearly, since it has, again, one of the smoothest rides in the segment, in my opinion. And so for this kind of a buyer, absolutely they made the right choice going for a softer, smoother ride, even if it means maybe it doesn't handle quite as good as Tacoma. I'd say Tacoma's a little bit of a rougher ride as a result. So you just take your pick on what your preference is there. But otherwise, though, whenever you are just cruising, like, this road is a little bit on the rougher side, so sometimes generates a little more road noise. We have the AC going and stuff here, but it's actually pretty well behaved too. For a mid-sized truck, it's really pretty quiet in here, and just, again, a really smooth thing just to cruise around in. And I don't know, like, I'm not a truck guy myself, I will admit, but I actually just really enjoyed having the Ranger as a little errand run around, and just as a thing to live my life with. The Ranger is actually really nice, and yeah, I just actually really enjoyed driving it. So I think that really goes to show just how much more car-like, in a way, some of the ride qualities are in these new trucks. You don't really have this giant sacrifice with a ride that beats you up like you had in some of the trucks of the past. And as far as the other capabilities here of the Ranger, it does tow up to 7,500 pounds, properly equipped, and also it can have a payload of up to 1,711 pounds here with the four-wheel drive version. Now, speaking of four-wheel drive, that is, of course, an extra cost option. These do come standard with rear-wheel drive and an open rear axle. You can get a locking rear diff for about $420. This one has that option. And then, of course, you have the four-wheel drive system, and you have the usual assortment of 4 high, 4 low, and again the various drive modes here, including a slippery drive mode for those inclement conditions and all of that. And so it's great that you have the drive modes in addition to the four-wheel drive system, and those drive modes will automatically configure everything correctly. If you're new to trucks and don't know what you should be doing, it'll also help you out and kind of hold your hand there a little bit. Like, now we're merging onto the highway here. Yeah, this thing, it really pulls nicely. Even though on paper it might be down compared to some of the others, you're not going to be wanting for horsepower in this, I don't think, at all. It really is such a strong accelerating thing. And now out on the highway here in the Ranger, it's a really nice highway cruiser as well. You do have some pronounced tire noise for sure at some of these higher speeds, but if you have the radio going or you have a conversation going, you're not going to really be hearing as much of that. So not a big deal, and that's kind of, again, par for the course with vehicles like this. But we are going around some gentle corners here, and I do have the lane keeping assist system on, which does come standard on XLT and higher, but unfortunately adaptive cruise control is an extra cost option in a tech package. It's about $1,500 extra, even on an XLT here like this. So that is one area where some of the other competitors will give you the adaptive cruise as standard. This doesn't do that, but a lot of the others make you pay extra for it as well. So this isn't the only one that charges you for it, but it's doing a really good job. Now, you do also, with the XLT and higher, get blind spot monitoring. You have auto high beams, rear cross traffic alert, with rear auto brake and park sensors. This one also, with the tech package, even gives you the 360 camera and all that, which is great to have all those extra features. And you know, the system does a really good job here. The only thing I will complain about, and I complained over this actually with the 2024 Mustang as well, is that when you have lane keep assist on, oftentimes it will say your hands need to stay on the wheel, even though my hands are on the wheel and they're applying torque to it. It's a really dumb sensor that doesn't seem to have very much bandwidth as far as recognizing when your hands are actually on the wheel. So I've been getting lots of false alerts here whenever I've been using it this week. And just something that Ford needs to tweak there, or have better sensors or something, I don't know. But that's really the only you know, downfall of the system. Otherwise, it works really well. And you know, it's just unfortunate though, you have to go to this XLT trim to get a lot of that standard safety stuff, like the blind spot monitoring. You know, so if you're shopping for base trucks, I think some of the other competitors will give you a little bit more in that base level. Fuel economy for the Ranger here is rated at 20 mpg in the city, 24 on the highway, and 22 combined. And I've actually been pretty impressed with the fuel economy here this week. That is another area where this is really well done, because that is, even just by the numbers, about 2 mpg better than what you're going to certainly get with the V6 powered Frontier, but also 2 better than the Chevy Colorado actually, and does about the same as the Tacoma. But my impressive thing here is that in my driving here this week, which was about the same as any of the other trucks that I've had for a week here, I got 20.7 mpg before I did all the idling to film this interior and stuff. So basically I hit even up to 21 at one point. So 21 mpg or thereabouts. And typically in my driving, I do get 1 to 2 mpg less than the city rating typically. So I was expecting 18 to 19. And some of the other vehicles, again, like I had the Tacoma in early spring, so, you know, again, cold weather oftentimes hurts fuel economy, but I was getting, I think, like 17, 18 mpg in that same deal in the Colorado. The Nissan Frontier wasn't quite as fair of a comparison because I was driving the Pro 4X version with the knobbier tires and the extra off-road stuff on that one. That one I think was like 16 and a half what I got in that. But, I mean, regardless, even by the EPA's numbers and by my own experience, the Ranger seems to be the fuel economy king as far as efficiency goes here. And so really cool that it offers that. And, you know, honestly, again, because this motor is so strong, I would honestly discourage going to the 2.7 because you're going to get probably worse fuel economy in that than you get here in this. And I don't think you need it because, again, the power is just so good here anyway that I think this is really a strong combo. And I could potentially see this, because I'm doing better than I usually do, I could see this potentially even overperforming its ratings. And again, I was doing mostly around town suburban stuff where I should be getting 20 and instead I'm getting 21. So yeah, I'd say it actually overperforms those estimates, which is rare these days. So really well done as far as the efficiency here from Ford. I think that's probably one of the areas where, even though this hypermiling that this transmission wants to do is a little annoying at times, there's probably a lot of other times where it can get away with that hypermiling, and that really does pay dividends as far as that fuel economy is concerned. But the last thing to mention here is the pricing and how it compares to the competition. And that is where the Ranger's proposition gets a little less sweet. So they start around $35,000, which is pretty much right in line with all the other competitors from a base kind of starting point. And I will say that you get a little more horsepower in that base truck than you get here in this. So that is one perk if you are shopping that base truck. A lot of the others downgrade you on horsepower when you go for their lowest versions. Ford doesn't, so that is certainly nice. Now, as far as like this one as tested is a little over $46,000, and a Lariat fully loaded is going to get to about $53,000. And that is a little higher than most of the other competitors. Now, Tacomas can also kind of match that and even exceed that potentially for their upper luxurious trims, but it's a little higher than, like I said, a fully loaded Frontier, like I was talking about in the interior segment here. Fully loaded Frontier with all the same kind of stuff here as this is going to run you basically right at 46 grand. And so, again, it's going to come down to, do you want the turbo motor? Do you want the newest stuff versus that Frontier kind of being a warmed over version of the last gen truck with great styling still, but there's an older kind of platform in many ways, and again, older engine as far as just the traditional V6 kind of thing, even though it has been redone. But so Frontier, well, just since we're already talking about that, that is, I'd say, the strongest competitor, because that's the best deal in the midsize trucks right now. You can get one of those comparably equipped to this for, I'd say, about $43,000 or so you can come in with some nice savings. And then, like I said, fully loaded, you can match you know, this as tested price of this mid-grade Ranger at 46 with those. And so I'd say that's definitely the one to beat from a value standpoint. Again, the compromises there are the worse fuel economy, the V6 not being as punchy, you know, in the lower RPMs there around town. But you do get less standard safety equipment in the Frontier, and it's also worth noting at that 43 grand price tag, you still are not getting LED headlights, which a lot of the others do also make you still pay extra money and go up to top trims in order to get that, versus in the Ranger here in the XLT, you got those LEDs as standard. You get that great nighttime visibility. If you want to have LEDs in the Frontier, you've got to jump up to that SL trim, which is going to cost you 46. So again, still matches this, and again gives you more for your money. So I'd say, you know, even with that, you still come out ahead there in the Frontier. But you know, it's not a huge savings, and that's why I think, you know, if you're only talking a couple thousand here or there, you know, the Ranger might win out with its, again, its bigger screen, the newer, fresher vibe of this interior, the exterior, and all those types of things can certainly be nice little perks. The other really strong competitor, though, is the Chevy Colorado, and that's because they do give you some better standard equipment. For example, you do get keyless entry and push-button start as standard in all Colorados, and that's something, again, even in this XLT, I still got the key here. So, you know, there are some perks there. Now, with the Colorado, it's also interesting that, you know, you get the 2.7 liter 4-cylinder as standard, which, I mean, you could argue potentially is a less stressed motor because it does pretty much similar horsepower to this. But it's interesting the way that Chevy does it, because if you go for lower trims and you don't go for the max output of that engine, it gets less horsepower, significantly less. I think it's like 237 horsepower in those lower versions of the Colorado. But if you go for that Turbo Max version, which I think is about $1,500 extra, then that does give you actually like 310 horsepower and like 430 pound-feet torque, a lot of torque, really punchy, and basically gives that upgraded you know, Ranger motor here a run for its money. And the thing is, even with that upgraded engine, a comparable Colorado is going to cost you about $47,000. So maybe $700 more than this for a lot more power. Now, there's some downsides to the Colorado as well. Like I said, you get slightly worse fuel economy, you get slightly smaller screens, and the tech inside the Colorado seems a little buggier than it is here in this. You also have odd things of cost cutting, where like Chevy got rid of the headlights switch, so you now have to go into a few sub menus in order to turn on your headlights manually, or if you need to turn them on for construction zone or something out of the ordinary. You know, there's just those minor little nitpicks there with the Colorado. But you know, just the fact that you basically, for just a few $100s more, get a much punchier engine. If you are someone who's after that, maybe considering the 2.7 upgrade here in this, just check out the Colorado, which gives you that, you know, punchier kind of setup for, you know, very similar money. And the last competitor is the top seller in the segment here, and that is the Toyota Tacoma. Now, funny enough, the Tacoma that I just had earlier this year was almost identically priced as tested, right around $46,000. But at that comparable $46,000 price tag, an SR5 Tacoma looks, to me at least, a little cheaper. Just looks like you're missing more options than something like this, which looks kind of more complete at that same price tag. And also, you know, the thing about the Tacoma here is you do get like a smaller little 8-inch screen as standard. Still has all the basics, still does wireless CarPlay and stuff, but just not as much of a wow factor as this big screen. So from an interior nicety standpoint, I'd say this wins over that Tacoma as well. Now, the perks of the Tacoma at that, you know, same $46,000 price tag is that you probably have better resale value. Tacomas have, you know, some of the best resale values in the automotive industry in general. So it has that going for it. There's no guarantee that these new next-gen Tacomas will retain that, but it's most likely that they will, to one degree or another. So that's certainly a nice perk of the Tacoma. Also, the Tacoma offers you different bed and cab lengths and a lot more different trim options and a lot more customization, but especially the fact you can still get a 2-door version with those. You can still get the long bed. Now, that's something the Frontier does offer as well. It's the Frontier and the Tacoma are the last two that offer those, you know, variabilities. But, you know, that's just another nice thing here. If you are someone who doesn't want a crew cab 5-foot bed, just know that Tacoma is going to offer you that extra option there of, you know, doing those various other things, as well as having some other cool trims. There's a TRD version, a couple different TRD versions, you know, with a sport one and off-road one. They also offer a manual transmission. I believe they're now the last one in this segment to offer that. So there's a lot more there with the Tacoma. That's, you know, part of it is just the perks of having, you know, one of the most popular trucks out there, and, you know, the ability to have as much customization as they can just because of how many they sell. But, you know, those are the perks of the Tacoma. And again, there's really no upcharge. Again, $46,000 comparably equipped. To just, again, to me, you get a slightly less nice looking truck, but you can certainly upgrade the appearance of those and still be pretty close to the price range of this. So, you know, with all these new trucks, they really are, they all have their own little niches where they are, you know, more competitive than the others, but then there's downfalls to all of them as far as, you know, areas where they might fall short. So it all just comes down to what your personal preference is, what you're looking for, what you want exactly, because I mean, they're all just, again, so competitively priced and so close of a group here that it's really hard to call a definite winner. In my mind, it really comes down to personal preference. But I have to say, again, ride quality wise, I think Ranger is my favorite. I think the way everything's set up, and again, on these lower trim versions, I think this is, you know, definitely one of my favorites in this segment as far as the way everything's packaged and set up. But again, there might be some other things, you know, like people might not love this screen, or, you know, various other things that might sway you to one of the others. And I really feel like there's probably no bad choice in this segment, to be completely honest. I'm not just saying that as a cop-out. I truly feel like they all have their strengths. It just comes down to, again, what exactly you want. But anyway, that's all of my thoughts here on the 2024 Ranger. Let me know your thoughts on it in the comments below. Huge thanks to Ford for providing me here with this Ranger to review for you guys today. Yeah, thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.